Welcome back. In South Africa, it's the second week of a 21-day nationwide lockdown initiated by the government as measures being taken against the spread of the coronavirus. Well, let's get a picture of the situation, what the situation is like, and our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia joins us now from Johannesburg to tell us. Good afternoon, Betty. Tell us, what's the situation where you are with the current lockdown? Has there been full compliance?
Well, to some extent, there's been a measure of compliance. But then again, with the lockdown being as long as it is, we're not even at the end yet. There's a huge disparity depending on the area. Disparity in terms of the size of living spaces. So going to places like Hillbrow, Alexandra, Yeoville, Soweto, places that we visited yesterday, you have quite a huge number of people gathering around outside. In such areas, you have people, probably families of 5 living in a 2-bedroom apartment, or even in some cases a 1-bedroom apartment. So it's quite difficult having people to stay in, complying totally to the lockdown. And a lot of people still are queuing at grocery stores around the country. Then come to areas like Houghton, Sandton. There's a measure of compliance. Many who go out grocery shopping go in their cars, go in straight to the areas, to their locality, and they go back home. So there's a measure. The issue of social distancing is a problem in these sort of living areas where the spaces are much smaller. Then you have community feeding efforts by NGOs, by individuals as well, which is drawing quite a number of crowds, defeating, the issue of social distancing. Then we have, which is making headlines now, the Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, who is the Minister for Communications and Postal Services also, who had a picture of her having lunch with a former colleague. Of course, she's been suspended for 2 months, one of the months unpaid, suspended by the president. There are various issues. On the corporate level, you have the SAB, the brewer, whose trucks were arrested, the drivers were fined because of alcohol movement. Part of the regulations at this time is that no alcohol should be moved, although the company has come out to say that they were not actually moving it for sale. They were moving it to a storage facility owned by the company. Those are some of the things. And then there's a debate over the sale of cigarette, where the people are still, some have actually looted some stores, trying to get cigarette and alcohol. And the debate over letting, relaxing that regulation about people selling or buying out. Of course, in all of this, black market is booming for cigarette sales. And then we've seen about 20 schools in some parts of the country, mostly Gauteng province, being vandalized and some of the schools burnt. The people who are doing this are targeting the admin blocks. They steal some of the things. They're probably computers and all that, and then set the buildings alight. We woke up this morning to another incident similar to what we've experienced in Gauteng, the latest in Gauteng being Soshanguve, a township around Pretoria. Then we woke up to one in KwaZulu-Natal, the school building, set alight by God knows who. Then there's also the issue of a hospital making headlines in KwaZulu-Natal as well, St. Augustine's Hospital, where over 66 people connected with the hospital have been found to have tested positive to COVID. Over 40 of those people are hospital staff, and we've recorded 44 deaths, I beg your pardon, in that hospital. The head of the hospital is answering questions at the moment, trying to give reasons why what happened may have happened. But it's obvious, according to the MEC or responsible for health in that province, that's KwaZulu-Natal province, saying that due process hasn't been followed regarding handling of patients, where patients were placed in the wards with other patients. They were suspected to have had pneumonia and all that. So those who were COVID positive were placed in the same place. So now that has caused a problem for the health authorities.
Now, in a country with a very high unemployment rate, are there any incentives for businesses to ensure that staff are not laid off due to the crisis? And what's the plan for the informal sector?
Well, the issue of staff being laid off, if we don't want to kid ourselves with an economy that has suffered even before this suffering has started, it's more or less a given. But that apart, it doesn't take away the fact that there are different kinds of initiatives from government, from the private sector, and even from private players who are doing things within their communities. On the government level, you have the Solidarity Fund, where for starters, you had as much as 4.5 billion rand, deposited in it. It's open for anyone to put into to help the COVID for the COVID relief fund, which is sparking debates over racial qualifications. You have a stimulus package, which is still in the works, and then the UIF, which is the unemployment insurance fund, which is already paying out quite a lot of money for lost income. Since the lockdown, according to the officials, they've been paying as much as 30 million rand per day to people, and claimants are writing in more and more. But then 10 billion rand is what has been earmarked, of this year's 30 billion put aside to pay for UIF, but 10 billion of that 30 billion has been earmarked for payouts for lost income during the lockdown alone. And then the various departments in millions, the agricultural sector, even the entertainment sector, where the Minister for Sports and Culture, Natim Tetwa, had announced before. The tourism sector, you have about 200 million for players in that sector, because that is one sector that is really badly hit and will be hit for some time to come in the wake of this crisis. So there are in the different places, but jobs will still be lost. We know that some businesses may not even make it back after this crisis. Then some private industry players are making efforts. You have efforts, initiatives to for example, to assist food producers.
South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia, thanks for those updates coming from there. Now, the economic fallout from the coronavirus could increase global poverty by as much as $500 million, and this bleak warning comes from the United Nations study into the financial and human cost of the pandemic. Now, the report says it will be the first time that poverty has increased globally in 30 years. Now, that report, which estimates a 400 to 600 million increase in the number of people in poverty across the globe, says the potential impact of the virus poses a real challenge to the UN Sustainable Development Goal of ending poverty by 2030. Meantime, the World Trade Organization projects that world merchandise trade volumes this year will fall by between 13% and 32%. Their calculations are subject to uncertainty about how COVID-19 and its economic impacts will evolve. The report says the optimistic scenario would be worse than 12% drop seen at the height of the global financial crisis in 2008 to 2009. And that's our program today. Thank you for watching. I am BC Adebayo.